so na I hope so na hindi dahil gusto ko pong i-pursue yung unang question ko kanina. Kung hindi po ito sasagutin ngayon, sa second reading ko na po yan masasagot, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to appease Honorable Franz Castro, second reading will be March 11, 12, and 13. We will be given ample time, and in fact, the Speaker has given us directive that we can either start the sessions early and end the sessions late in the wee hours of the morning. And as of the moment, there are no plans to invoke cloture. So if I may, Mr. Chair, the presence of our distinguished resource persons here is very important because they can give us inputs to how we will be debating in the plenary by next week. So, Mr. Chair, may we now request the Honorable Franz Castro for additional questions.
Representative Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Majority Floor Leader. Sa atin na lang pong kay Honorable Justice Vicente Mendoza po, yung atin pong constitutionalist. So yung unang question ko po, Mr. Chair, nakalagay kasi doon doon sa na kapag in-open up natin yung all educational institutions to foreign control and ownership, meron pong dalawang part doon po sa proposal. Magkahiwalay na paragraphs yung babaguhing provision. Ibig sabihin, hindi dahil gagawin ng basic education lang sa first paragraph and therefore ibubukas ito sa foreign ownership, ang tertiary. So automatic po ba ang ibig sabihin ng amyenda on the second paragraph ay kasama pati yung tertiary level? Sa pagkakaintindi niyo po, Justice Mendoza, Mr. Speaker, doon sa proposal.
Honorable Justice Mendoza.
Okay. Sige, i-repeat ko po doon po kasi sa pagkaka-craft noong RB 87, particular po doon sa Article 14 on education. Magkahiwalay na paragraph yung babaguhing provision. So ang ibig bang sabihin di porke gagawin ng basic education lang yung first paragraph and therefore ibubukas to foreign ownership ang tertiary. Automatic po ba ang ibig sabihin ng amyenda sa second paragraph ay pang tertiary education din? Ayon po sa pagkakaintindi niyo sa proposal.
I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question, Congresswoman. I need to know what is basic. I don't know what is basic education, and I'm just being educated now what basic education is. So please excuse me.
Okay, pag basic education po,
This is
sa
not in the
DepEd is
this is
from-
not in the present provision.
Yes.
They want to qualify this to basic education.
So ang ibig sabihin doon sa proposal ay magkakaroon ng question on the coverage noong yung pinopropose po on ownership.
Well, actually, my objection to to resolution number 7 is that it gives Congress as a lawmaking body the power to change the Constitution. That's my basic objection there. You cannot give that because the amendment of the Constitution or the changing of the Constitution can only be done in accordance with Article 17. And Congress power is only as a constituent assembly. If it does not sit as a constituent assembly, I believe Congress cannot be given power to do that by ordinary legislative action.
Okay. Sige po, Mr. Chair. Thank you po, Justice. Doon po sa 1987 Constitution, babasahin ko po no, in Filipino. Ang mga institusyong pang-edukasyon, bukod sa mga itinatag ng mga pangkat ng relihiyoso at mga kalupunang misyon, ay dapat naari lamang ng mga mamayan ng Pilipinas o ng mga korporasyon o mga asosasyon na ang 60 bahagdan man lamang ng puhunan ito ay ari ng mga mamamayang Pilipino. Gayunman, maaring itakda ng Kongreso ang karagdagang lahok sa equiting Pilipino sa lahat ng mga institusyong pang-edukasyon. So, sinasabi niyo po kanina, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, sinasabi po ng ating ni Justice Mendoza po na doon po sa proposal natin na basic education, dahil sinasabi kasi dito, no, all ang mga institusyong pang-edukasyon. So, ibig sabihin po, from basic education, that means elementary, secondary, ngayon kasi may senior high school na tayo, no? Or yun na, yung secondary, at saka yung tertiary. So, ang ibig sabihin po ba na sa Constitution ay sinasakop nito yung lahat ng level ng educational institutions. Mr. Chair. Kay Justice Mendoza.
I think it covers all educational institutions at
Okay.
present.
So sa paglalagay po ng basic doon sa proposal and unless otherwise provided by law, ano po ba yung magiging implication nito?
Now, to qualify that as only limited to basic and give Congress flexibility is, I think, objectionable. Not that it cannot be done, but not in this way. It must be Congress as a constituent assembly, not Congress as a lawmaking body.
Okay, punta na po ako sa next question ko, Mr. Chair. Mayroon pong principle of statutory and constitutional construction na nagsasabing where the Constitution or law does not distinguish, neither should we. Kung babasahin pong amyenda, the control and administration of educational institution shall be vested in citizens of the Philippines, unless otherwise provided by law. So the amended sentence will not appear to make a distinction between basic and tertiary education. So ang ibig bang sabihin, magkakaroon ng opening for a dangerous interpretation that allows schools at all levels to be controlled and administered by the alien.
Know about that. All I know is, but it was my colleague, Justice Ascuna, who claimed that during the deliberation of the Constitutional Commission, which drafted this Constitution, there was an agreement not to touch any of these provisions for a period of 5 years. Let it take root, and only after 5 years, give Congress that power. However, that proposal was never approved in the Constitutional Commission and never became part of the Constitution. What is clear as prohibited within 5 years is what you call this initiative, people's initiative, which you cannot have except every 5 years. But with respect to this, nothing was agreed in the Constitutional Commission. So my answer to this is that this provision actually carries out provisions in Article 2. These are not to be carried out without any prior principle. Now, my point is, if you touch this, if you amend this, you will also be contradicting Article 2. And Congress cannot do that. Those principles can only be amended by Congress as a constituent assembly, not by Congress by law.
Ayon, pupunta na po ako, Mr. Chair, dun sa pangalawa kong punto. So, on propriety or stock, ownership and control lang, o pati yung academic control and administration. Dahil, Mr. Chair, mabigat na epekto ang una at ikalawang punto doon sa proposal. Dayuhan na ang magkakaroon ng say sa kung anong ituturo ng mga eskwelahan at kung ano yung mga i-inculcate sa ating mga kabataan. Therefore, mawawalan ng silbi ang iba pang nationalism provision ng Constitution. Kanina, Mr. Chair, nabanggit na ni Justice Mendoza yung magkakaroon ng conflict itong proposal na ito doon sa Article 14 on education na magkakaroon ng conflict on Article 2, Section 13. Basahin ko lang, Mr. Chair. The state recognizes the vital role of the youth in nation building and shall promote and protect their physical, moral, spiritual, intellectual, and social being. It shall inculcate in the youth patriotism and nationalism and encourage their involvement in public and civil affairs. Yung Article 2 rin, Mr. Chair, Article 2, Section 17, the state shall give priority to education, science and technology, arts, culture and sports to foster patriotism and nationalism, accelerate social progress, and promote total human liberation and development. Article 2, Section 3, Paragraph 2, all educational institutions shall inculcate patriotism and nationalism, foster love of humanity, respect of human rights, appreciation of the role of national heroes in the historical development of the country, teach the rights and duties of the citizen, strengthen ethical and spiritual values, develop moral character and personal discipline, encourage critical and creative thinking, broaden scientific and technological knowledge, and promote vocational efficiency. So, ang tanong ko po, parang magkakaroon ng conflict ngayon, yung proposal dito sa iba pang mga provision ng ating Constitution. Tama po ba, Justice? Kasi po kanina nabanggit niyo na po yung Article 2, Section 13. Dinagdagan ko na lang po ng ilang pang mga article.
It's difficult for me, Congresswoman, to answer your question. In the first place, I have a hearing problem. In the second place, acoustic in this big hall is not so good. But maybe we can have a conversation and I'll let you know.
Okay. So, thank you po,
Or you can
Justice
break it down.
Mendoza. May I call Mr. Chair, Dean Abad, and maybe Attorney Estrada would answer. Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
Permission to speak, Your Honor.
Yes. You may respond to the query of Representative
Yes, Your
Rosas.
Honor. Thank you very much. Ma'am, sa pagkakaintindi ko po dun sa mga tanong ninyo kanina, yung paragraph 4, section 2 ng Article 14 na subject ngayon ng ating pinag-uusapan, tinatanong niyo po kung ito ay salungat doon sa ibang mga constitutional provisions Now, ang sagot ko lang ay simple. Ang pagkakaintindi ko po ay ito po ay salungat doon sa mga ibang constitutional provisions. Kailangan pong i-harmonize ito. Pero sasagutin ko rin po yung punto ng aking profesor na si Justice Vicente V. Mendoza na ang pamamaraan ng pagpapaamendo ng itong provision na to ay karapat-dapat lamang at in accordance with yung constitutional requirement itself that it be in a constitutional assembly or a constitutional convention. Now, dito po sa sinasabing Section 4, klaro po na with the proposed amendment, yung ownership ng institution ay po pwedeng ibigay sa foreign investors kasi basic ed lang po ang tinutukoy ng proposal that it will be owned solely by citizens of the Philippines or corporations, associations, at least 60%. Now, ang pangalawang sentence po ay medyo ambiguous insofar as it says, but Congress may increase Filipino equity. So yung pangalawang sentence po, while sinasabi na pagka-basic ed, kailangan 60% Filipino-owned, yung susunod na sentence, sinasabi naman, pwede namang i-increase ng Congress ang Filipino equity sa lahat ng mga educational institutions. No? So meron ng konting conflict doon, hindi harmonized. Pangatlo pa, pagbabasahin nyo yung pakatlong sentence, medyo mas magulo. Kasi yung control and administration ng educational institution is vested with Filipino citizens unless otherwise provided for by law. Which means, therefore, that the Congress can also enact a law which takes out the control and supervision from the Filipinos. So it is really an issue of the plenary legislative powers of this body. But as pointed out by Justice Vicente V. Mendoza, you cannot do this by mere legislation, and we have to go into either a constitutional convention or a constitutional assembly. Maraming salamat po.
Yes, thank you po. Medyo nalinawan na po ako doon sa explanation ni Din Abad na magulong provision dito sa article or proposal dito sa Article 14 on education. Sa DepEd po, hindi man po sinasadya, hindi tayo nag-usap, ang Department of Education, hindi tayo nag-usap sa posisyon, pero magkaparehas tayo ngayon ng posisyon. At na-appreciate ko yon. Okay, so sinasabi kasi ng mga proponents o may mga idea na gusto nating ibukas ang basic education natin kasi may learning crisis tayo, may educational crisis tayo. So tingin nyo ba makakatulong itong pagbubukas sa mga alien nitong ating basic education, Mr. Chair? Sa DepEd po.
Yep, Mr. Chair, thank you, ma'am. The DepEd again reiterates that our opposition is with only through basic education, number one. And if I may quote from the last paragraph of our position paper, the DepEd strongly opposes the proposed amendments to paragraph 2, section 4 of Article 14 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution, specifically vesting full control and administration of basic education institutions through aliens through legislation. So our concern is really the possibility that the ownership and control of and administration over basic educational institutions will no longer be under the regulatory control of the government. If ever a subsequent legislation, Mr. Chair, would pass. So yun po, in that sense, Madam Chair.
Pero ang tanong ko po, sinasabi kasi, Mr. Chair, sa DepEd na dahil meron tayong learning crisis, educational crisis, we might as well open up this basic education. Baka magagaling, di ba? Yung mga eskwelahan na nandun abroad para matuto tayo ng math, science, and reading comprehension. Ano po sa tingin nyo doon, Mr. Chair, DepEd? O meron kayong proposal para ma-debunk yung sinasabi na okay naman yung ating sistema, meron lang tayong dapat na baguhin. May mga alternative ba kayo para mas mabago natin yung sistema, yung situation ngayon na meron tayong education or learning crisis? Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Madam Congresswoman, under the present curriculum of the department, yan pa rin naman yung ginagamit natin sa lahat ng mga eskwelahan natin, pati private schools. And with regards to engaging foreign countries, for example, Southeast Asian countries, with regards to curriculum implementation, meron naman talaga tayong SIMIO na nagpa-partner tayo with our fellow ASEAN countries for improvement of our curriculum and enrichment of the way we implement our curriculum without necessarily letting foreigners own our basic education schools. So we can still maintain ownership of the basic Filipino ownership of our basic education schools while partnering with foreign countries that could help us in the implementation of a national-based curriculum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you po sa DepEd. Kanina kasi binanggit ni Mr. Chair. Can I continue, Mr. Chair? Can I continue, Mr. Chair? So, about the RA 11448, yung transnational law, expanding the access of education services through the establishment and administration of transnational higher education. So, kay Chair Popoy po de Vera, so, paano ba ito sa konkreto? Paano po ito yung nangyayari sa konkreto? At meron po ba tayong study, kung ilan na po yung mga ganyan na itsura? Tungkol sa exchanges, for example, ng scholarship, mga professors natin pumunta sa ibang bansa. So ano po yung coverage nitong batas na ito on your IRR?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even before the transnational education law, meron ng mga dinevelop na twinning programs between Philippines and foreign universities. In fact, CHED supported twinning programs between UK and Philippine universities as early as 2016. And it has produced...
Ayun po ba sa mga teachers lang yan or including students po?
Yung master's and PhD programs
teachers.
jointly delivered by UK universities and Philippine universities. Umaandar na po ito, meron tayong 13 niche programs produced by both schools. So even before transnational education law, pwede naman po, pagka-twinning program ang gagawin. Ang mahirap ay yung foreign universities setting up campuses in the Philippines. That is a little tricky to do because the incentive system is not in place. Hindi po sila basta pupunta dito. Pero meron na pong plano yung Kamosum College in partnership with Miriam College to set up a campus in Pampanga using the transnational higher education law. Meron naman pong paraan under the transnational higher education law. Ang problema po natin, yung ating transnational higher education law, compared to the laws in other countries, is not as incentive-driven as in the other countries. Yun po ang problema. Pag kinompare yung sa atin versus Malaysia, versus Korea, medyo mas pupunta po yung foreign universities sa mga bansa na yun kaysa sa atin.
So, Mr. Chair, ano po yung tinutukoy ninyong mga incentives?
Congresswoman Castro, yes,
Last na.
last point.
Our time has already expired, so we can
Pwede
move to
bang
the next
pasagutin ko rin, Mr.
interpellation.
Chair, si Dean Abad? Kasi siya yung nagbanggit nung RA 1148 after Chairman Popoy.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, you may proceed with the answer.
Halimbawa po, sa Malaysia, nung tinayo nila yung Edu City, they created a special education zone exclusively for foreign universities para pong enterprise zone ito. And they granted incentives to the UK schools that will go there, including funding infrastructure as an incentive for the schools to relocate there. Even with those incentives, nung nagpunta po ako doon at kausap ko yung rector ng mga university, sabi nila, mga 5 years daw before they can before they can earn. Kaya po may mga madami nagpunta sa Malaysia kasi yung incentive package nagugustuhan ng foreign universities. We don't have that model yet in the Philippines, although there are potential enterprise zones, pero hindi po ito nakagear exclusively for educational institutions. Ganon din po sa Korea. Last point, Mr. Chair, yung concern po na yung curriculum will be controlled by foreign institutions, in the countries in ASEAN that have opened up, the curriculum is still approved by their ministry. That is the case in Malaysia, that is the case in Korea. Hindi po natin pwedeng basta ibigay. So dapat po, pag nag-craft ng batas ang Kongreso, they are still governed by Philippine laws as far as the curriculum is concerned.
Thank you po. Kay Dean Abad, Mr. Chair.
May I proceed po, Mr. Chair? In answer to your question, ma'am, among the membership of the Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities, what I personally know is that a lot of our bigger universities already have had linkages, which means memoranda of understanding or memoranda of agreement with foreign universities for transfer of knowledge, meaning to say that they invite foreign professors to come in and teach, and for our professors to go to their universities to teach as well. We also have been sending students to different universities abroad. In the same manner, they send students, their students, to our universities. Now, these are simply linkages. Hindi pa ho yan yung mga dual degrees because the implementing rules and regulations only came out in 2021. Although I know of a few that have tried to put up like a common program na partially dito sa Pilipinas, tapos padadala yung estudyante po abroad to get the degree of that foreign university. Yun pa lang ho, because nga ho, itong experimentation na ito ay bagong-bago pa lamang, itong Transnational Education Act. So hindi pa ho talaga siya nasusubukan dahil bagong-bago lang po ito. And this is one reason why we say, why don't we try this experimentation first? Marami pong salamat.
Okay,
Thank you
po,
very much,
Mr. Chair.
Congresswoman Castro. Majority Leader.
Mr. Chair, I move that we now recognize a representative of the 1st District of Isabela. We have Deputy Speaker Antonio Tonipet Albano for his interpellation.
Deputy Speaker Tony Pet Albano, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. We are all here to educate our people, and seeing that the statistics show that we are in the bottom of the pit for education, we need to move forward and open this competition so that competition is good and uplift the educational system here in the Philippines. I have a request with DepEd and with SHED that if they can just submit to this committee how many of the best high schools in the Philippines, students that are actually admitted to the best universities here and colleges in the Philippines, and also the best universities of in the world, like the Ivy Leagues and so. Can they answer me, one of the two? DepEd? Do you have any statistics on how many of our best high schools that you've produced, students that can go to La Salle, Ateneo, UP, the best universities here, and also abroad? Do you have that?
Mr. Chair, not at the moment, Mr. Chair, but we can get it for the committee, Mr. Chair.
Okay, because later on I will show you how dismal our educational system here, especially when they graduate and they cannot even enter the top universities locally and especially internationally. May I ask Ched then, if you have any knowledge of this, how many of the best high schools that are produced here can enter the top universities in the Philippines?
We cannot get that data, Mr. Chair, because high schools are under the jurisdiction of
May
the
we ask
DepEd.
you then to coordinate with DepEd, because both of you are the educational systems in the Philippines, and get us that, and please submit to this committee.
We will defer to DepEd on this matter, Mr. Chair, because they have control over the records, Mr. Chair.
May
But we
you
will
ask
help.
the universities that under your control to submit the list of how many of those students come from the best top universities in high school in the Philippines, so that we may know what is the batting average of these best high schools that could enter the best universities in the Philippines. Please submit.
How much time are we given, Mr. Chair?
You have until before Holy Week when we want to wrap this up. As soon as possible, Mr.
We
Chair.
have 2,000 public and private higher
I'm only
education
asking for the best
institutions.
high schools so that we can show the disparity of how many students can actually enter the top universities here in the Philippines. Maybe 5.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we can pick the top 5 public and private universities and request them to submit their data to CHED if that will suffice for the instructions of Congress, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. Chair, not allowing my time, I will reserve the right to later question and see the statistics to show people that it is quite dismal, especially when they apply for the top universities in the world. They are not accepted because of the dismal failure of our educational system. Now for Cocopea, Mr. the President, Del Carmen, are you still here?
Yes, Mr. Chair,
And Attorney Manawag is still here?
Yes,
You are
Mr.
opposed, and you said, because foreign schools has more funding and will disadvantage local schools. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Right. Are you saying that the business of your schools are more important than the education of our students who are already lagging behind in world rankings?
Mr. Chair, of course not, Mr. Chair. At the moment, what we're basically saying is that these heavily funded foreign institutions, when they come in, they will basically be another a third-party competitor, basically, because at the moment, our private education sector is really hurting, and we are on a uphill battle even against our public counterparts.
And is
So-
not that fault if you are at the uphill battle, if we open the competition? Because that means your schools are not at par at the educational level that these foreign institutes can bring here?
No,
So
Mr.
it's about economics?
Not necessarily, Mr. Chair. What we are advocating at the moment is for the complementarity of our public and private education sectors, because that is how our education system is arranged at the moment. So
Why is it arranged like that? And your solution is to create more guidelines to improve our educational system. That is what you said, and I quote, right? You want to craft an educational system to be at par with these foreign nationals who are far more better, right?
Not necessarily, Mr. Chair. What we my earlier statement, Mr. Chair, was basically we have existing laws, we have existing guidelines, programs that perhaps we can advocate more to improve? Because there is potential in our existing education system, if only
Hindi
that...
because you are COCO and you are amalgamation of all the schools and you represent them, why have you not done this? Why are we lagging behind? Tell me. Why are we, what ranking do we have? Sixth. Third from the bottom in science in average scores of 356. Sixth from the bottom in mathematics. 3 out of the average score of 355. Sixth from the bottom in reading. You said you represent the schools, you want to create the system. Why has that not been done now? Why do we have these rankings?
Mr. Chair, we understand, but the private education sector lacks the sustainable support from government. And at the moment, we
Don't
cannot
blame
even...
government, because government supposed to be, coming from DepEd, is the highest budget in all of the departments. So why? I'll tell you why. You lack competition. You don't want to open this up because you are basically saying, which I already was saying, it's economics for you. You don't want to open a competition because you said, hirap na nga kayo makakuha ng estudyante. Bakit kayo hirap? Kasalanan ninyo. Hindi ba kayo nagbigay ng magandang quality education? Dapat kayo as a eskwela, lahat kayo nagsama-sama with DepEd and SHED to create a better school system so that your high school students can enter Ivy League schools, can enter La Salle, Ateneo, and UP, and all the others. Now let me get back. May I ask, the British School of Manila, Ed School, Martin Van der Lind, are you here?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
You are 100% owned and funded privately?
We are a not-for-profit, non-stock education corporation.
So, we can admit schools that are non-stock and non-profit here in the Philippines by Republic Act, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is the batting average of graduating high school students in your school, BSM, that are accepted to good universities in the Philippines and the best universities in Europe, or even the Ivy League? Do you have that, Mr. Van?
I do not have the specific data, but certainly above 90% of our graduates annually enter local and international universities or colleges.
90%. And how many students do you have?
We in the entire school, from nursery through to year 13, we have 965 students.
And
We
your graduates for high school?
graduate annually between 60 and 70 students.
And out of that, 90 students go to wonderful top universities in the world. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And because they are accepted to the best universities, the students that you have educated are well off in life today, especially your alumni. Is that correct?
That's a rather subjective question, Mr. Chairman. But generally, I would think they would be. Yes, sir.
All right. And in the UK, what are the top 5 universities?
We have
I
a
would
long list.
presume that BSM graduates will go to their British counterpart schools and universities in the UK.
Our students go to universities around the world, including Philippine universities like Ateneo and De La Salle as well. But in the UK, we're proud to have students who have attended Bath, Cambridge, King's College, Loughborough, Manchester, Warwick, Edinburgh, and on. But also in the United States, UCLA, Harvard, Stanford, Penn State, Georgetown, and others around the world too.
All right. Let me tell you the top 5 universities in the UK, which you have just mentioned. Oxford University, University of Cambridge, ICL, UCL, and all the others. Do you know how much, after they graduate, sir, do they earn their salaries and entry level?
Unfortunately, I don't, Mr. Chair.
I have the statistics. 93% of Oxford graduates from 2020 to 2021, their median salaries are 32,000 pounds, up to 35,000 pounds. How much is that? 2.5 million pesos annually. Meaning, if we have that same educational system here in the Philippines, they don't have to be OFWs anymore. They can earn 2.5 million yearly. That is what poverty here in the Philippines is. And that's why education is primary. Same thing. In the economy of UK, the University of Oxford alone contributes to around 15.7 billion pounds to the UK economy. Can you imagine if our top universities, our top schools here in the Philippines produce that kind of mentality, educated people that can translate into helping our economy and lift our country into poverty? The statements of our UP students, Rodenias Alo, their statement is that this will take away the Philippine history and Philippine subjects. Mr. BSM Head School Martin, do you have any Filipino national subjects that you're teaching in BSM for our Filipino students who study there?
Mr. Chair, as per our Republic Act that defines us, our curriculum is UK-based, certainly through primary, an adapted form of the curriculum, but we're very proud that the adaptations that we add are very specifically connected to Filipino history and culture. And I can share, for example, that in our primary years, we do have very specific structures, including basic Tagalog, Filipino, agriculture, dance, music, food, language, traditions, and culture throughout our primary phase. In our senior phase, we engage in intercultural learning, particularly with our local service community and beyond within Filipino culture and history.
So this is for both Filipino and international students that are there.
For all students, Mr.
So
Chair.
you're debunking what they're saying, that the nationalism is gone when we have foreign 100% ownership schools here in the Philippines. Is that right?
I'm not sure if that debunks it completely, Mr. Chair, but we are very pleased to be guests within the Philippines and extend our learning to all of our students, whether they be Filipino or international.
Very good. Thank you for that. So what I'm saying is nationalism is really dependent on the person. Okay? Mr. Jose C., UP teachers, are you still here? Maybe I will ask our Mr. Alo. Mr. C, UP Teachers Aid, because you're from UP, he cited Jose Rizal as the national hero. Do you know where Jose Rizal studied?
Jose Rizal studied in UST, then in Ateneo.
And where else?
Barcelona, Madrid.
Barcelona, Madrid. Why did he have to study abroad?
I don't think that's a question I can answer, Mr. Speaker.
You don't know your history, and you're from UP. How shameful. Here, from 1879 to 1882, Rizal studied medicine, agriculture, serving, philosophy, etc. at the UST. Dissatisfied with education there. So where did he go? In 1884, Rizal completed licenses in medicine philosophy at the Central University of Madrid. Did it make him less patriotic? No. So why are you afraid to bring schools here to educate our children? Did he not die for our country, Mr. Alo?
He did die for our country.
He did. Did he not write 2 books? What are the 2 books that he wrote?
Ano po yun? El Filibusterismo and No Me Tangere.
And what language did he use?
Spanish.
Spanish! My gulay. Read your histories and be more educated. He, national hero, was studying abroad. Open the schools here and let all our students have this information. History of education in the Philippines after the Spanish, because the Spanish wanted to control only the tertiary education. When the Americans came, alas, Ched, Bobo, how did the educational system history here in the Philippines? Didn't the Americans open it because the missionaries came and opened the grade school and opened the education for all Filipinos and not only Spanish?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that was part of the colonial policy of the United States to open the public educational system,
And
Mr.
who
Chair.
were the first teachers here? Weren't they not foreigners?
They were called Thomasites because they rode on the SS Thomas ship that was brought here. Many of them actually were not educators. They were volunteers who wanted to teach in a foreign country.
But were they foreigners?
Yes, initially, Mr. Chair. Later on, Filipinos who graduated from primary and secondary school were allowed to teach. You did not need a college degree at that time to teach in public school, high schools, and elementary. A elementary graduate and a high school graduate were allowed to teach if you were Filipino because they needed a lot of teachers because of the public school system, Mr. Chair.
And that proves my point, Mr. Chair. Foreigners were here to educate us in the beginning, and now we can educate ourselves. But you have to open it up to competition so that you can actually, you cannot raise your hand if I don't recognize you. So, Mr. Chair, nationalism is good, but you don't have the monopoly of love of country. We all do. We love this country, just like Jose Rizal, who died, but was educated abroad. I myself, I will not compare myself to Rizal, but graduated at UCLA and went to Harvard for some executive courses. But I do love my country and I am nationalistic. And I will lay my life, like Jose Rizal, to protect the nationalism of our country. But please, educate our children. They should be educated in the best schools that the Philippines can have. Whether international or local universities should set up here, as long as they are the best institutions to educate our children. I myself am ashamed. Why? My daughter, who is 18, is graduating in Brent. Why? Because we have one of the best educational systems so that if they apply in the Ivy League schools abroad, in Oxford University, in Harvard, Stanford, and the likes, she has at least a chance of going to the best institutions in the world, learning from them like I did in UCLA, coming back to the Philippines and educating everyone here, especially in the laws that uplift the poverty and the poor people of the Philippines. So I dare you, open the educational system in the Philippines to competition to make sure our children can be educated by the best minds in the world. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker Tony Pet Albano. We truly feel your enthusiasm and your spirit in your interpellation. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Yes, what is the pleasure of the gentleman from Albay?
Yes, a short intervention so that we know what amendment we are talking about.
So,
Because,
yes.
because this is a prejudicial question.
Majority Leader. There's a question of privilege. There's a procedural question addressed by Congressman Lagman.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, and
we'd like
I
to,
could address this to the
may we recognize the representative of Albay, Congressman Edsa Lagman,
thank you.
to have a short intervention. Please limit your intervention for 3 minutes. Thank you.
Under the present Constitution, under Section 4.2 of Article 12, educational institutions are indeed generic, which means to say they would include primary, elementary, secondary, and tertiary. With respect to the ratio of Filipino equity or even dominance in educational institutions. Under the resolution we are discussing now, there is an amendment which categorizes institutional institution and limiting it to basic in relation to the Filipino equity in educational institutions. So are we saying that in the event this amendment is approved, the subsequent legislation will only increase the alien ownership or capitalization in basic education institutions, but will not include secondary and tertiary education.
Thank you very much for your point, Congressman Lagman. This was exactly the same point raised by Congresswoman Castro earlier. But the sponsors and I decided that it will be on the period of second reading that we will defend the proposed measure, and we will focus on the resource person during this period.
Well, I think we should be able to resolve this now, Mr. Chairman, because many of the resource persons were concentrating on tertiary education. And the discussion veered away from the proposed amendment, which is only basic education.
Yes, absolutely. We see your point, Congressman Lagman. That's why we would like to explore all levels of education so that we can have a deeper understanding and appreciation of the said industry and sector. And then once we proceed to the next level, which is second reading, the sponsors and I will be open for amendments, interpolations by our dear colleagues here in the House.
But we should not be talking about all levels, Mr. Chairman, because our own proposed amendment limits it to basic education, which does not include secondary and tertiary. In other words, if we amend the Constitution through legislation, if that is possible, that is even questionable, then it would be limited. The entry of foreign investments in the Philippines will be limited to basic education. And I think we should be able to resolve that now. Can we get a response from the sponsors or from the floor leader?
The chair calls for a 1-minute suspension. Okay. Committee hearings resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recognize the 2nd District of Marikina Representative, Congressman Stella Kimbo, to respond to the query of Congressman Lagman.
Okay. The chair would just like to remind Congresswoman Stella Kimbo, just on that specific point raised by Congressman Lagman, I will allow you to answer the question because we have a next interpellator from the minority, which is Congressman Raul Manuel. And just so that we can understand, at 4 o'clock, all the women will be taking over plenary. So let's just be very quick and concise with their answer. You may proceed.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I believe the question was with respect to the interpretation of paragraph 2 of RBH 7, which is that the proposal is for the ownership of basic education facilities to remain at 60-40, and for the restriction on ownership of tertiary education, of tertiary educational institutions to be lifted.
Well,
Congressman Lagman.
Mr. Chairman, the opposite is the correct interpretation. When we qualify educational institutions to basic only, then what will be the subject of any change in alien equity would be with respect to basic, because the other provisions here would not include any change in the tertiary or secondary levels. What is my interpretation, and I submit that we should be guided by such interpretation, because what is the purpose of qualifying educational institutions to basic? Otherwise, there will be no purpose at all. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Chairman.
Congressman Lagman, for highlighting that point. Majority Leader.
Mr. Chair, may we now move to recognize Representative of Kabataan Party List, Congressman Raul Daniel Manuel, for his interpellation.
Congressman Raul Manuel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, syempre, ang mga kabataan, binansagang pag-asa ng bayan, at ang nagsabi nga nun ay si Gato Rizal. Mr. Chair, tanong ko lang po sa representative ng National Union of Students, mga student councils, would he agree that Spanish was used para maunawaan ng mga Spanish colonizers, no? Kung ano yung mga mali sa lipunan during that time?
Yung ginamit po yung Spanish primarily.
Yes or no na lang po. Would you agree na bagay yun ng objective ni Rizal, bakit Spanish yung ginamit niya?
No.
So anong reason bakit Spanish yung ginamit?
Well, yun lang po kasi yung option. Again, sinulat po yung mga librong yun nung panahon na nag-aaral po sila sa Madrid, di ba? So hindi po naman hinayaan ng mga colonizers na magsula si Jose Rizal in Filipino.
So, ibig sabihin na he was constrained during that time?
Yes.
Pero paano naunawaan ng mga Pilipino yung kanyang sinulat?
Primarily, syempre, parang may mga nagtatranslate din naman for people. Tapos inaral din naman ng ibang mga Pilipino yung...
Please speak closer to the microphone.
Okay. So ayun, hello? So ayun, syempre po, nandun din yung collective action ng mga Katipunero para mag-prop din po sa mga people to actually let the Filipinos know kung ano po yung nangyari sa lipunan.
And why did he study abroad?
Well, kabilang na rin po doon yung pagiging oppressive din ng institutions na meron sa Pilipinas and yung lack of opportunities. Ibig sabihin po, dahil nga po kulang yung opportunities na makapag-aral sa Pilipinas, napilitan po si Jose Rizal na mag-aral sa ibang bansa.
At bahagi din ba ng ginagawa niya while studying abroad ay yung matuto mula sa mga liberation movements and popular struggles in other countries?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'd also like to direct the question sa ating Alliance ng mga Student Press, CEGP. Based sa mga data na nakakalap nyo, marami bang mga estudyanteng Pilipino ang nangangarap na mag-aral abroad? Gaano karami?
Sa nakala po na datos ng Philippine Collegian, ito po ang official student publication ng UP Diliman, ay unequitable po talaga yung access sa education ng Filipino, doon pa lang sa SUCs natin, at particular sa UP. Dahil according po dun sa results ng UPCA 2023 or yung UP College Admission Test, ay 50.15% po ng UP passers ay mula sa private schools, habang 24.02% ay mula sa public science schools. At yung galing po sa public general schools ay 20.04% lang. So sa kabuuan, 3/4 po ng nakakapasa sa UP ay either galing sa private schools or dun sa mga science schools. Yan po yung binanggit, di ba, na kadalasang pinaperceive po na best high schools dito sa Pilipinas. Pero ang nire-reveal din po ng study na ito o ng mga data na ito ay may pinapaboran na advantage groups yung education system natin. Kasi there seems to be a delusional assumption ngayon, di ba, sa dinidinig natin na foreign ownership of education, that this will improve the quality as well as the access of Filipinos to education. Pero if dun sa SUCs pa lang is inequitable na yung access, ano po yung assurance na binabalik po namin itong question na to, ano po yung assurance na talagang i-improve ng foreign ownership yung access to education, especially ng disadvantaged, marginalized groups?
So, there's this thought na kapag pumasok yung mga 100% foreign-owned schools sa atin, then mas madali yung chance. Halimbawa, batang mahirap ay makakapag-aral, makakakuha ng credentials from a foreign school. Pero based on those data, masusupport ba yung gano'n? Na ibig sabihin yung sa education ladder ay likely yung chance ng isang batang mahirap na makapag-aral sa mga foreign schools?
No, if anything, if may i-improve po siya na access, yun ay dun sa already privileged students. So hindi po niya nasasaklaw yung kalahatan. At if babalik po tayo, yung cost ng education, sino ba yung makaka-afford nito? At titingnan din natin dun sa past nga na, or iba pang data na binigay ng other resource persons tungkol dun sa mga foreign institutions sa other countries. For example, sa Malaysia, na yan yung University of Reading ng UK School. Ang tuition po dito ay 40,000 or 470,000 pesos. Sino po yung makaka-afford dito na Filipinos?
Okay. How about sa mga out-of-school youth natin? Bahagi din ba ng pangarap nila na makapagtapos ng pag-aaral sa mga foreign school? Is that their direct concern sa pang-araw-araw na buhay nila?
We believe that still the primary concern of the students is to attain education, quality education. But we don't see that this quality education is necessarily exclusive only to foreign-owned institutions.
Okay. to the resource person from De La Salle University, kasi merong other resource person from the Local Government Development Institute na ang banggit ay kapag pumasok at magkaroon na ng competition yung mga local schools natin sa mga foreign schools, this would somehow influence yung ating mga local schools na mag-review ng kanilang fees kasi nga may kakompetensya sila. Would you agree with that statement?
No, Your Honor. When the foreign schools come in with their fees, the Philippine institutions will probably not follow suit because right now, their fees are 4 times higher than ours. And if we do that, we will be not doing our mission. We will be failing our mission, which is to provide education to us, quality education to as many Filipinos as possible. So we don't really look at the foreign institutions as competitors because we are different market levels.
So kapag ganon, at halimbawa, maraming mga batang mahirap na gustong pumasok sa mga international schools natin, kung kayo magbibigay ng estimate, gaano karami dyan yung mabibigyan ng scholarship or free education para nga makuha nila yung ganong credentials from foreign schools?
I cannot speak for the foreign institutions because that will depend on their mission or business models. But what I can tell you is De La Salle University, for example, provides scholarship to 26% of our students.
So, ibig sabihin, kapag ganun, hindi assurance na halimbawa bababa yung fees ng mga local schools natin kung may pumasok na mga foreign schools?
Well, the fees will not go down nor go up. We will maintain the fees that we have now, and we try our best to provide as good an education to as many as Filipinos as possible with that.
So that said, Mr. Chair, ibig sabihin, hindi naman pala assured na mas mura, mas accessible ang edukasyon sa mga foreign schools natin. And of course, kasama pa dyan ang magiging admissions process nila. Kaya tingin natin, Mr. Chair, mababa ang posibilidad, no? At yung likelihood ng pangako ng dekalidad and quality education, accessible education through full foreign ownership ng ating mga paaralan. Tingin natin still, no, yung mga mas may kaya, di sila nga actually yung makakatipid kasi kaysa gumastos pa para ma-send abroad yung kanilang mga anak, dito na lang nila pag-aaralin kasi andito naman na yung campus ng mga foreign schools. Next, Mr. Chair, to EDCOM 2, no, sa legal counsel ng EDCOM 2, kasi sa Senate naman, the executive director of EDCOM 2 stated his position in support, no, blatantly in support, no, and also there are press releases, no, supporting yung economic charter change sa schools. Pero can I clarify, nasa report ba talaga ang recommendations ng EDCOM 2 ang full foreign ownership ng schools?
Good afternoon. Wala pa pong position po yung EDCOM. I think what was presented in the Senate, the same presentation that I had this morning, we just provided our initial scanning and evaluation of the policy environment, ano pong magiging implication once we open up. But it has not been discussed yet by the commissioners from both houses on our position, and we defer to Senate and Congress on that.
Yeah.
Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you for that. At least malinaw lang din sa bahagi naming mga mambabatas yung ganong posisyon so far ng EDCOM 2. Next to the League of Filipino Students, kasi nabanggit nga rin nationalism, ganyan. Paano ba talaga natin na-express ang pagiging makabayan natin? Now, ako I believe din naman kung nandyan yung DepEd at CHED to monitor curriculum, then yung framework, yung outline ng curriculum, imamandate pa rin yan ng gobyerno. Pero gusto ko lang malinawan kasi sa actual implementation, doon pwedeng nag-iba-iba. Sa pagtingin ng inyong organization, halimbawa merong 100% foreign school na pagmamayari ng mga Amerikano. Realistically, can we expect that school to really teach yung tunay na nangyari halimbawa sa Philippine-American War? Kung ano yung atrocities na ginawa ng occupiers dati from the United States sa mamamayan, yung genocide na ginawa dati sa mga Pilipino. Would that be accurately taught? Hello. Tulad nga nung nabanggit po kanina, let us learn from our history. Nung pumunta po yung mga Amerikano dito para magturo, tinuruan nila tayo na nandito sila for benevolent assimilation, for peaceful reasons, hindi for colonization. At tinuruan nila yung mga Pilipino na maging anti-revolutionary. So I think we can see a similar trend kung given the scenario na hinapagpunin nyo. Especially, the US is currently maximizing its military presence here in the Philippines. It really needs to build popular support from intellectuals, from students, and other sectors of the society. So definitely, they will use their curriculum to instill that narrative to the students that they are here for peaceful reasons, they are allies, and we need their military presence. Thank you. In a similar vein, kung meron namang 100% foreign-owned school na mga Chinese naman yung nagmamay-ari, can we expect na ituturo nila sa mga estudyante na yung West Philippine Sea ay teritoryo talaga at bahagi nung sa Pilipinas? Of course, ituturo nila yung kanilang false claim ng 9-dash line or yung bago na ngayon na 10-dash line. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Sa Kokopeya naman po, kasi ang usual din na pinag-uusapan natin talaga ay both public and private, paano aayusin yung quality. Imposible na ba na ma-improve natin yung quality of education natin with not tinkering with the provisions of our Constitution?
We believe that we can improve our current education system even without amending the Constitution. Everything, the Congress has the power to pass legislation to improve our system at the moment. And in fact, we can even review our existing guidelines, our implementing rules and regulations in order to encourage or promote internationalization, encourage foreign education institutions or investors to invest in the Philippine educational institutions.
Okay. Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I would want to listen to the inputs of...
Yes, you're recognized. You may proceed.
Mr. Chair, we also would like to support the earlier statement that was given by Chairman De Vera, that our schools naman are not a diploma mill, no? Marami naman po tayong magagaling na institutions, no? The problem in our educational institution probably would be access, no? And we don't see that opening it up to foreign students will improve access, because how many of the students can afford to go to these international schools? No? Kaya po yun naman pong punto ninyo na are we trying to improve? Yes, we are continuously trying to send our faculty to train abroad, and they can go back here and try to improve our system. We are doing twinning arrangement with some of our schools are doing twinning with international schools. So nandun po yung effort for us to improve our education system, no? But the earlier promulgation that opening it up to the foreign schools will educate majority of our Filipino students and provide access, hindi po yun ang mangyayari. Because very few of our students can afford to go to these foreign schools if ever they set up here. Pero meron po tayong ginagawa na twinning arrangements, collaborations with other foreign schools that will help improve the quality of our education po. Salamat po, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chair, kay Ma'am Ada naman from PACU. Ito, shift na po ako, Mr. Chair, dun sa actual na text ng nakalagay sa RBH 7. At kasi, Mr. Chair, I want to clarify, kasi merong ownership, merong equity participation, tapos meron ding control and administration. Mr. Chair, would the resource person from PACO agree with me na magkaka-connect yung mga to pero magkakaiba din essentially ang ownership, ang equity participation, tsaka control and administration?
May I, Your Honor? I agree with you, sir, that these are all interconnected. And in fact, the way that this was worded, kung titingnan niyo po yung original na constitutional provision, nakahiwalay po yung paragraph ng the control and administration of educational institutions shall be vested in citizens of the Philippines. Nakahiwalay po yon. Kaya parang dahil sa pagkahiwalay niya, emphatic po yon, parang pinapalabas na ito po talagang para lamang sa mga Pilipino. Lahat yan po ay nakalagay sa konstitusyon. Ngayon, nung iniakyat yon sa isang paragraph lang po, pinapalabas naman po dito na basic education in all kinds of institutions, tertiary, secondary, need no longer be just with the control and supervision of Filipino citizens, but can be opened up now to foreign equity, to foreigners. So yun ho yung sinasabi kong medyo magulo, na dapat lang po ay bigyan ng pansin nitong kongresong ito. At ayun nga po, i-emphasize ko rin uli yung sinasabi po ni Justice Vivi Mendoza na kung magbabago po tayo ng konstitusyon ay ayon lamang doon sa sinasabi rin po ng konstitusyon na Constitutional Assembly or Constitutional Convention lamang po. Salamat po.
Mr. Chair, again to the same resource person, kahit yes or no na lang po, ibig sabihin pwedeng iba yung nagmamayari ng educational institution, tapos not necessarily pareho din yung may equity participation or nag-infuse ng capital, iba din yung administration ng paaralan.
Opo.
So, thank you. Ibig sabihin, Mr. Chair, no, kasi kung control and administration, sa admin, pwedeng ang nire-refer niyan ay president ng university, yung dean, principal, board of regents, or trustees. Mr. Chair, ang mangyayari sa higher education, so far, kung based dun sa text, paano natin siya i-interpret, ang mangyayari, full foreign ownership, tapos ang mga top officials din ng higher education institution ay mga foreigners. Tapos Mr. Chair, actually nga sa constitution natin ngayon, kahit nga exempted ang mga religious and mission schools from the minimum na 60% Filipino ownership, minamandate pa rin na ang school admin nila dapat Filipinos. Yun po yung nasa current na konstitusyon natin. Ibig sabihin, kahit na banyaga yung may capital infusion dyan, gusto natin talaga yung nagpapatakbo ng paaralan Pilipino. Pero Mr. Chair, with RBH 7, pati yan, yung Pilipino yung administrator, bibitawan pa natin. Also, Mr. Chair, ang mangyayari din, we have 60% Filipino ownership as minimum pero ginagrant pa nga tayo sa Kongreso na pwede nating taasan ang required minimum na equity participation ng mga Pilipino. So, ibig sabihin talaga ang pinopromote ay Filipino stake doon sa ating mga paaralan. Pero, Mr. Chair, ito yung tricky doon sa RBH 7 natin. Mine-maintain ang 60% Filipino ownership. Pero pwede din sa basic education na hindi na rin Pilipino ang mga school administrators. Kaya we're not confident, Mr. Chair, na ang pagtuturo ng curriculum ng kasaysayan, ng history natin, at maging ng constitution natin na para sa Pilipino ay ma-maintain talaga natin yan. Kaya ito din, I'd like to ask again from Paco din, kasi dinilit yung restriction on foreigners sa student population. Sa ngayon, dapat maximum lang 1/3 or 33% ay mga foreigners. Pero sa RBH 7, pwede na maximum 100%. So I thought, ang gusto natin, access ng mga Pilipino to quality education. Pero ito, Mr. Chair, baligtad. Para mga banyaga ay mag-aaral dito sa atin. No? So I thought para to sa Pilipino. So ano pong comment doon ng Paco?
marami na hong foreigners nga nag-aaral dito, pero because it is in the Constitution, yung mga miyembro po namin na mga universities and colleges adhere to that one-third requirement, that only one-third of the total school population could be foreigners. So we follow the Constitution strictly po. And well, that is one of the issues nga that is pervading here.
Okay. Some final thoughts, Mr. Chair, dahil nga masyadong malabo ang construction ngayon ng RBH 7. Kahit sa higher education, conflicting din siya, na ang isang educational institution, pwedeng foreign-owned siya, pwede ding foreigners ang magiging school admin, pero dahil nandyan pa rin yung nakasulat na Congress may increase Filipino equity participation, ang mangyayari pa, sa banyaga yung school, pero pwede pala na i-require, i-take advantage ng Filipino capital para ipasok doon sa school na yon. No? So actually naaabuso ang mga Pilipino sa ganong provisions kahit sa higher education dahil doon sa parang pinagtagpi-tagbing phrasing ng RBH 7. So to conclude, Mr. Chair, with my interpellation, we have good teachers sa Pilipinas. Ang potential ng mga kabataang Pilipino nandyan. But we have been failing our teachers and our students dahil ang mga matagal naman ng problema na hindi naman attributable sa Constitution ay hindi natin talaga fully na naaaksyonan. Kaya Mr. Chair, hearing din from our resource persons, not having heard strong support sa education community for economic charter change sa education, then still we maintain our position to resist this economic charter change. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Majority Leader.
Mr. Chairman, for the subject matter of amendment of the education, may we manifest for the record that there are still 8 members who have registered to interpolate. Unfortunately, Mr. Chairman, in a while, I will be making a motion to suspend the committee hearing because we have to go to the plenary